Welcome you to the Deep Dive. Today, we're journeying into some really hidden and frankly pretty disturbing corners of major American cities. We're going to be uncovering the chilling reality of active serial killers. Killers who, despite their horrifying acts, somehow remain elusive. We'll look at some ongoing unsolved cases, specifically in Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland. These are cities really grappling with persistent violence. And then we'll ask a truly unsettling question. Are we maybe on the brink of another surge in serial killer activity? Sort of like that infamous golden age from decades ago. So our mission today is really to try and uncover the patterns these unseen predators leave behind, to understand the immense challenges investigators face and explore the profound impact on the lives tragically cut short. We'll also, touch on what historical and sociological factors might be playing a part in these disturbing trends. Okay, let's unpack these grim truths together. Our journey into these shadows starts in Detroit, Michigan, a city, already facing its own struggles. And back in May of 2018, a truly chilling discovery just sent ripples of fear through the community. Just picture it. Waste authorities uncovered the bodies of two young African-American women, not together but dumped in separate dumpsters, about 15 miles apart. It's awful. They were covered in trash. Both had been brutally beaten, raped, and stabbed to death. Investigators later figured out that one woman had been deceased for maybe 3 weeks before she was found, the other for about 3 to 5 days. And they think her body was actually dumped somewhere else first, then moved to the dumpster. Through fingerprints, they ID'd them as 22-year-old Shannon Morgan and 28-year-old Cheyenne Jones. Now, both were described by police as high-risk victims. That's a term law enforcement uses. For people whose lifestyle, maybe sex work or drug offenses, tragically makes them more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And critically, less likely to be immediately reported missing.
Right.
And what's really unsettling here is that no one did report them missing.
Yeah, that's often part of it.
Which contributes to this devastating label, the less dead. It implies their disappearance doesn't get the same urgent response.
Exactly. It's a grim reality of how these cases can sometimes be treated or perhaps overlooked initially.
And at these scenes, a complete lack of forensic evidence. No clothes, no ID, no DNA. Nothing to point to the killer.
Just vanished, essentially, before the end.
Then, July 28th, 2018, just a couple of months later, another victim. And this marked a significant, really frightening shift in the killer's pattern, it seems. 26-year-old Michelle Johnson, found dead in her own home by her boyfriend coming back from work.
Oh, wow.
Tragically, Michelle had also been beaten, raped, and stabbed, mirroring the horrific MO, the method from the first two killings.
The same signature, basically.
Exactly. But Michelle Johnson was different. She wasn't a high-risk victim, no criminal record. She had a good job, lived in an upper working-class area.
That's a major departure.
Huge. Her home was ransacked, money, jewelry, electronics, even a gun she reportedly owned, all gone.
Sure.
But no signs of forced entry. Which makes investigators think she either knew the killer.
Or he talked his way in.
Right. And adding to the chill, the phone lines to her house, cut. Deliberately.
Okay, that's planning. That's calculation.
And crucially, investigators later confirmed. Similar blade, similar rope type used in all three killings. It links them firmly.
Yeah.
But despite these horrifying connections and that shift in victim type, there's still no leads. All three remain unsolved.
That shift to Michelle Johnson, it feels deeply unsettling. From an investigative view, how fundamentally does that change the game? Does it make the killer harder to profile, or maybe does it open new doors? Oh, it's a critical observation, and it absolutely alters the investigative landscape completely. Right. When a killer moves from what police categorize as high-risk victims, people maybe on the margins, to someone with no apparent connection to that life, it suggests more than just growing boldness.
Right.
It points to a potential evolution in their victim selection, maybe even their core fantasy. Initially, investigators might focus efforts, on specific areas, certain social circles connected to the first victims.
Makes sense.
But a victim like Michelle suggests the killer's confidence has ballooned. They're comfortable approaching victims in seemingly safer places, maybe even interacting with them beforehand, talking their way in, as you said.
Yeah.
This broadens the potential victim pool massively, and it makes profiling much, much harder. Because those initial assumptions about where they hunt or their type, suddenly they don't hold up.
Wow.
It often signals an escalation in the killer's own mind, maybe seeking a bigger challenge or feeling this heightened sense of control.
That's a really sobering thought, this idea. The killer could be evolving, getting more sophisticated, harder to pin down. Okay, so from Detroit's, isolated but connected horrors, let's shift to Chicago. a city with a different kind of shadow, maybe even more pervasive. Here, the sheer volume of violence, plus a tragically low solve rate, it creates an environment some chillingly call a serial killer's playground.
It's a tough situation there.
The patterns of unsolved murders go back decades. It paints this grim picture of a deep systemic challenge. Since 2001, get this, at least 75 women murdered in Chicago under alarmingly similar circumstances.
75. That's staggering.
Isn't it? The method is horrifyingly consistent. Strangled or smothered. Bodies dumped callously, alleys, dumpsters, vacant buildings. Autopsies show some were also raped, severely beaten. Now, like in Detroit, many victims led high-risk lives, had records for prostitution, drugs.
Not all.
But crucially, not all of them did. Ages ranged widely, 18 to 58. Most were African-American. And out of those 75 cases, only 25 solved. 13 men arrested, some for multiple murders.
So that leaves
50 unsolved murders.
Yeah.
Which leads many to believe there are multiple serial killers active in Chicago right now, operating under the radar.
Multiple killers. That's a terrifying thought for a city.
It really is. And to give you a stark example, winter 2016, a young woman's body found burning in an alley in a residential area. Other bodies were found just blocks away or further south. It shows how widespread this is.
Right.
And with reports of, lack of police patrols in certain areas, especially underserved communities.
Yeah, resource allocation is always an issue.
It unfortunately becomes terrifyingly easy for predators to operate without being caught, to get away with murder. And here's something really alarming. An algorithm, tracking crime patterns, it's signaling red alert.
Okay.
Because of the incredibly high number of unsolved strangulation murders, mainly of African-American women.
The data itself is screaming there's a pattern.
Exactly. And this isn't just new. Interestingly, a similar string of murders happened back in the late 1990s. Back then, a special task force was formed. They actually solved 40 murders, made dozens of arrests.
So there was progress.
There was. But here's the tragic part. The task force was eventually disbanded, and the murders, they continued.
Oh, no.
50 unsolved murders, possibly multiple killers. That's an immense challenge. And the disbanding of that 90s task force, only for the killing to resume. That feels particularly tragic. What lessons should law enforcement take from that history? How do cities really deal with such pervasive, ongoing threats?
Well, Chicago's situation is, it's really a stark reminder of just how persistent these kinds of crimes can be and the systemic challenges involved. You've got the city's high homicide rate, but combine that with a low solve rate. That does create an environment where, frankly, predators can thrive. That task force in the 90s, it was effective, clearly. They got results. But its disbandment highlights a critical issue. These underlying problems, whether it's, like you said, police resource allocation in certain areas, maybe a breakdown in community trust making cooperation harder, or just the sheer volume of cases overwhelming detectives.
Right.
Those problems don't just vanish when a task force wraps up. So when those extra resources are pulled, the environment that allowed the crimes in the first place, it's often still there, which lets these patterns reemerge.
So it needs sustained effort.
Absolutely. It suggests a long-term, sustained commitment is vital. It has to go beyond just short-term arrests. And that algorithm signaling red alert, that's powerful. It's not just counting bodies. It's spotting geographic clusters, specific MOs, victim traits, things that statistically point to linked homicides. It provides crucial data, sometimes stuff that gets missed in the day-to-day grind.
Data is key.
It is, but even with great data, you still need that sustained human effort, community trust. It's all connected.
It's clear, that fighting these unseen threats needs an unwavering, long-term strategy. It can't just be reactive. Okay, let's turn our attention now to Cleveland, another city with its own haunting history of serial murder. Many listening might remember Anthony Sowell, arrested back in 2009 after the bodies of 11 women were tragically discovered at his home. It left a deep scar.
A horrific case. Absolutely.
But despite arrests like Sowell's in the past, it seems there's still one, maybe even more, killers active in Cleveland today.
Still ongoing.
Looks like it. The numbers are sobering. As many as 61 unsolved homicides involving women since 2004.
61, wow.
And the patterns. Women strangled, stabbed, or killed with blunt force. But here the victim profile seems different. It skews older, and victims were more likely white or Hispanic.
Oh, interesting. That's a contrast to Detroit and Chicago.
It is. And a sophisticated analysis of crime stats done over 2 years concluded there could actually be as many as 3 serial killers loose in Cleveland.
3 simultaneously.
That was the conclusion. So the city responded, formed the Homicide Review Task Force,
And necessary step, clearly.
You'd think. But the sobering reality is, in the months since it formed, the murder rate hasn't really budged. It's remained steady. Back in 2017, the city had only solved 47% of its homicide cases, leaving so many families without answers.
Less than half. That's
Yeah.
deeply concerning.
That shift in victim profile, older, more white or Hispanic, it really stands out compared to the other cities. What does that demographic difference tell investigators? Or maybe what doesn't it tell them when they might be facing 3 active killers?
That demographic shift is, it's incredibly significant. But it also presents a really complex challenge for investigators. On one hand, look, a distinct victim profile can sometimes help narrow the search.
Right, focus things.
Exactly. It might suggest a killer's specific preferences, maybe their hunting grounds, even personal biases. It allows investigators to potentially focus on different social circles, different parts of the city. However, when you have the statistical probability, like they found, of 3 active killers, each potentially with different victim preferences, different methods, it just fragments the investigative effort enormously.
You're stretched thin.
Totally. You're essentially running 3, maybe more separate serial killer investigations at the same time in the same area. That strains resources like crazy, complicates analyzing the data, makes it harder to even tell which cases might be linked to which killer.
Yeah, I can see that.
Even with a dedicated homicide review task force, which is definitely a good step, the sheer volume and the potential diversity of these cases means they're facing a real uphill battle against, deeply entrenched violence.
It just paints this picture of immense pressure trying to connect dots when the pieces keep changing shape.
Yeah.
Okay, we've just touched on these very real, very current cases in these cities, but let's broaden out now. Let's look at the bigger picture of serial killers and what the future might hold for all of us. First, the basics. The FBI defines a serial killer pretty simply: the unlawful killing of 2 or more victims by the same offender in separate events.
2 or more separate events, that's the key.
Right, and the agency has previously estimated, maybe about 50 active serial killers at any one time in the U.S., responsible for less than 1% of all murders each year.
Which sounds surprisingly low, maybe, given the headlines.
It does. But what if the scale of this problem is actually far, far bigger than even the FBI estimates? This next bit of info, it really challenged my own thinking on how many might truly be out there. There's one retired investigative journalist. He believes there could be up to 2,000 serial killers currently active in the U.S.
2,000? That's a massive jump from 50. How did he get to that number?
His method was interesting. He asked the FBI a specific question: how many unsolved murders in your databases are linked together by DNA?
Using the forensic link.
Exactly. DNA can connect crimes across huge distances, different times, even when there's no other evidence. The answer he got back: about 1,400 cases, which was just over 2% of the total murder files they looked at for him.
1,400 cases linked by DNA.
Yeah. Can you help us understand the power, but maybe also the limits of relying on DNA to make an estimate like that? 2,000 seems huge based on that.
It's an excellent question, yeah, and it really highlights the double-edged sword of forensics here, the power of DNA linking. It's undeniable. You can take cold cases, different states, decades apart, and definitively connect them to one person, revealing a serial pattern where investigators maybe never suspected one before.
Right. It uncovers hidden links.
Exactly. So that 1,400 figure represents confirmed, undeniable links found through DNA. But, and this is the crucial caveat, that number only includes cases where the killer actually left detectable DNA that was collected and tested.
Oh.
And, not all serial killers do. Think about cases with blunt force trauma where there's no biological exchange, or strangulation without significant contact DNA left behind, or bodies disposed of in waste, fire, water that destroy evidence.
Right. Lots of scenarios.
So if anything, these 1,400 DNA-linked cases, they're likely a conservative baseline estimate of unsolved connected cases. It strongly implies the true number of active serial killers or unresolved serial murder strings is potentially much, much higher.
Wow. Okay, that makes the 2,000 estimate suddenly feel, well, less outlandish, actually. More plausible, maybe.
It puts it in a different perspective.
Okay, so now let's look forward. There's Peter Vronsky, a historian and author based in Toronto who studies serial killers. He believes we're headed for another surge of serial killers, similar to what was seen back in the 1970s.
It's the so-called golden age.
Exactly. He calls the period from 1970 to 1999 the golden age of serial killing. That's when 82% of all known American serial killers emerged. It's also when the actual term serial killer was coined. Now, Vronsky's research shows something interesting. While killers typically commit their first murder around age 28 on average, their personality, those dark fantasies, they're often formed way back in childhood, sometimes as early as 5 years old.
The roots go deep, very deep.
So Vronsky predicts another surge because he believes we're seeing a similar mix of societal factors now as we did leading up to that golden age.
Okay, what factors is he pointing to?
He highlights the 2000s financial crisis as a major catalyst. Think about the widespread stress, job losses, leading to familial breakdown, trauma impacting young kids.
Right, the 2008 collapse and its fallout.
Exactly. And he adds another layer, the impact of parents and families fighting in the war on terror, returning home with deep-seated traumas, PTSD, etc., that ripple through the whole household.
Generational trauma, essentially.
Yeah, so Vronsky predicts a potential rise maybe around the year 2030.
Why 2030 specifically?
Because that's when the children who experienced that familial breakdown and trauma around the 2008 crash would reach that average age of onset, their late 20s.
Wow, connecting the timeline of trauma to the timeline of offending.
Precisely. And this hypothesis, linking societal upheaval to future surges in serial crime, a number of criminology professors actually agree with him. It paints a pretty sobering picture. Vronsky's hypothesis, linking the 2000s financial crisis, the war on terror, to a potential surge in 2030. I mean, that is truly chilling. Can you maybe unpack the psychology or sociology behind that? How does that kind of breakdown and trauma in childhood potentially translate into this extreme violence decades later?
Yeah, it's a deeply unsettling theory, but it's rooted in what we understand about the long-term impact of early childhood adversity. It's quite profound. Think back to that golden age Vronsky mentioned. That generation grew up amid huge social upheaval, Vietnam War, civil rights struggles, changes in family structures.
Right, a lot of turmoil.
And what we consistently see in the psychological profiles of many serial killers is a background of severe childhood trauma. Neglect, abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. This kind of early experience can fundamentally hinder the development of empathy. It can warp personality development, leading to profound disorders.
It's deep wounds.
Exactly. Now, fast forward to the 2008 financial crisis. That caused immense stress, job loss, home loss, economic hardship for millions of families. That kind of pressure cooker environment often leads to increases in domestic violence, parental substance abuse, neglect, general familial instability. Similarly, the war on terror brought unprecedented rates of PTSD and other mental health challenges back home with returning service members, which, creates incredibly volatile home environments for children, kids exposed to these prolonged periods of chaos, fear, instability, especially during critical brain development stages. They can internalize that trauma in damaging ways.
How does that manifest?
Well, they might learn to see the world as inherently dangerous, unpredictable, trust is broken, and for some, a very small subset, violent fantasies can develop as a coping mechanism or a way to feel control in a world that feels out of control.
Or a way to reclaim power, maybe?
In a twisted way, yes. Now, it's crucial to say, not every child who experiences trauma becomes a serial killer, not even close. The vast majority don't.
Of course.
But for a small, vulnerable group, these intense societal pressures, these familial breakdowns, can act as potent catalysts. They can help form that internal landscape that years later, around that age of 28 or so, might erupt into extreme violence. So the 2030 prediction. It aligns chillingly with that typical age of onset, creating this potential echo of history.
That analysis, wow. It really connects the dots between these huge societal challenges and the potential emergence of these unseen, terrifying shadows. It's a very sobering thought. Okay, so we've really dug into some grim realities today. We've looked at the very real, very active cases of unsolved serial killings in Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland. And we've explored this unsettling possibility of a future surge based on historical patterns and deep societal trauma. These aren't just statistics, are they? They're stories of lives lost, families completely altered, communities living with fear and unanswered questions.
Real human cost.
Absolutely. So as you reflect on these chilling realities we've discussed, maybe consider how profoundly interconnected our societal challenges, economic crises, war, inequality might be with these hidden shadows lurking in our cities, potentially waiting to emerge. It really challenges us, I think, to look beyond just the immediate crime scene and consider the deeper currents shaping our world. We hope this deep dive has given you a sobering, but we hope also a vital look into a hidden side of our world. If you found this deep dive thought-provoking, we invite you to follow us, like, and share wherever you get your deep dives. Your engagement really helps us continue to unpack the most fascinating and sometimes, the most frightening insights. Thank you for listening.